Hello fellow crafters, Janine here, and today is part 3 of our beginner sewing course on how to sew a tote bag. Last week we put on some of the pieces and parts onto the bag, and this week we're going to be constructing the outside of the bag. We're going to be putting the handles on, sewing the gussets on, and constructing the entire outside of the bag. And as usual, I take it slow and take you through it step by step so that you can see each step in detail and how to complete it. So let's go ahead and get started with this week's lesson. Well, okay, we've reached a stage where we really do have to do something with our straps. So I'm going to go ahead and make those. I've already cut them out according to the pattern piece, and I like to put interfacing on them because the directions call for using a rope trim on the inside of the handle to give it that stability. I'm just not that fond of it, so again I'm kind of making this pattern my way, doing it the way that pleases me. So I'm going to go ahead and pin the straps together, right sides together of course. And we're going to sew down both sides across the end, just one end, and we're going to leave about an inch on each end, on the opposite end, that we're not going to sew, and we're not going to sew that side closed because we're going to have to push the strap through and then close those sides up. So I'm going to go ahead and pin that together. Okay, so I'm going to start sewing on the end where I'm going to end up at, where I'm going to leave it open and not sew it closed. So I'm going to start sewing right about even with this pin, but on this side. I'm going to sew all the way down the strap, across the bottom, and then back up to this point. Okay, when I get close to the end, I want to go to about 1/4 of an inch from the end, and then with my needle down into the fabric, I'm going to lift my pressure foot, turn, and sew across till about 1/4 inch from this edge here. And again, lift my presser foot and turn, and now as I reach my pins I can go ahead and start removing them. Okay, now what you're going to need is a really long knitting needle, a dowel rod, a skewer, something long and skinny, because we've got to push this all the way through from this end to this end. And I'm going to be honest with you, it's not that easy. And also I recommend you clip your corners right up, here's the stitch line, right up to the stitch line but not through the stitch line, and that's just going to give you a neater turned out corner. Okay, getting this started is really difficult. Alright, it worked a lot better using the blunt end of my knitting needle versus the sharp end. And there we go. Whew. That really is the hardest part, I think. Now what you can do is, after you fool with it a little bit and get it opened up nicely, you can go back and press it as well. And you see my needle poke through the fabric right there, but that's okay, because what I'm going to do is just, when I sew it down to the bag, I'm just going to put that side towards the bag so you won't even see it. And I'm going to use my knitting needle here to poke out my corners. Okay, now that you have it turned out, we need to close up this end of the handle. So what I did was I just turned the sides in, and we're going to stitch that first, and then we'll stitch the ends, and I'm just going to pin it just a couple of pins. And I know what you're thinking, it's that this top, we're going to have top stitching on this end but not all the way through, but I'm not worried about it, because when we attach it to the bag, we're going to be top stitching it onto the bag, so it's not going to be that noticeable. It's just going to look like the construction, you know, of adhering it to the bag, so it's not going to look bad. And I'm not going to start all the way at the very end. I'm going to come in just a little bit, about a little better than a quarter of an inch. Okay, and now we're gonna close up the top. Go ahead and tuck these ends in. Okay, repeat the process on handle 2. Now we've got this one closed up. Not my best work ever, but it's going to be okay, I promise. Once it's on the bag and stitched down, it won't look that bad. Okay, now it's time to attach the handles to the bag. So what we need to do, and I showed you before how you could use chalk to transfer these lines, but there really is an easier way and more effective way. So I'm going to lay my pattern piece down on top of my fabric. This is a piece of tracing paper you can get. I got mine at Walmart, but of course you can get it at your fabric store. And it's wax-free tracing paper, and the pack comes with several different colors. And I'm using white since it's on black fabric. I think it'll show up a little bit better. And I think I've got, let me see. Transfer, let's see. Okay. Just testing it to see which way was the correct way to put towards the fabric, because you want the part that's going to mark on the fabric towards the fabric. And then you're going to lay your pattern piece. Make sure it's all even. It doesn't help that I have two pieces here. It's confusing my eyes. Okay. A lot easier to see with one piece. Okay. Okay. Now, this is what they call a tracing wheel. So I've got the transfer paper, my pattern piece, and then my fabric on the very bottom, and I'm going to use a tracing wheel, and I'm just going to roll it along this placement square. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . I do the same thing on the other side. And it's not only going to show me where to place the handle, but it's also going to show me where to stitch it. Okay, and now you can see, or maybe you can't, but there's just a faint white dotted line and a square. So I'm going to take my handles, and I'm looking for the one that I poked the knitting needle through. Now I've pressed them too. I didn't push this corner out too good. Okay, this is the one I pushed the knitting needle through, so I want to make sure I put that one towards the bag so it doesn't show. So I'm just going to place the handle with the end of it towards the bottom placement line and make sure it's lined up within those dotted lines. And I'm going to get some pins, and I'm going to pin it in place. Okay, and then I'm going to make sure the handle comes around like this. Make sure you can see that. So don't get it twisted. Keep it going in the proper direction all the way around. Okay, and now we're going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to top stitch it on. Of course, you're going to repeat the process on the second piece as well. So let me go ahead and do that. And then I can, when I start sewing, I can just keep sewing. Okay, we're going to do this in much the same fashion we've done with other pieces. We're not going to continuously stop and start. We're going to turn our corners by leaving our needle in the fabric and turning it, and we're just going to top stitch. All the way around that square. And that's what I was telling you, because we're top stitching over where we already top stitched one end closed, so it's making it where it's not going to be really that noticeable. And I'm going to use it, let me grab another straight pin. I'm going to work where my because you can't see this line that good. So this, I'll know to stitch to this line here. I'm sorry, you probably can't see that, but I just placed it. I placed a pin. I found the marking line and just placed a pin on the marking line, so I'll know where to stop stitching, like so. Okay, and now I'm going to turn it and sew diagonal lines from corner to corner. And it's just a little bit decorative, but also to help make a nice secure attachment of the handle onto the bag. Because if you're going to have any weight whatsoever, you're going to want to make sure that your bag is nice and strong. Okay, and you're going to have to sew down one of your straight lines to get back to another corner. And you remove all pins too now that everything's nice and secure. Back stitch. Alright, you've got one side of your handle attached. And let's get the other side attached. Alright, there we go. We got some handles attached and they're perfect alignment and placement. And they match our fabric here. Isn't that just too cute? I love it. Okay, the next part of our directions say to sew these two pieces together, the front and back of the bag. So we're going to put them right sides together. And we're going to line everything up. And just give it a few little pins. It's not going to take a lot. Actually, about 3 or 4 pins would be plenty. With all this interfacing and the stiffness of the fabric, it doesn't wiggle around as much when you're running it through the sewing machine. And now that you've got all this interfacing and you've got, like, you know, 3 or 4 layers of it plus fabric, you're going to want to make sure you have a heavy duty needle on your machine, like a denim needle, to go through all of this thickness and to avoid tension issues. Alright, we're going to go ahead and pull the machine over, and we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam. Actually, a 5/8 inch seam, I think, is what the pattern calls for. And you're going to back stitch again for a little bit. We do this a lot. Lock the stitches down. Remove your pins as you go. Okay, when you get to the end, you're going to back stitch again to lock your stitches down. Raise your presser foot and cut your thread. And the next part is going to be sewing the gussets on. And that part can be a little bit difficult. I had to go to YouTube myself and look for tutorials on how to sew the gussets. And I just unthreaded my machine. That's okay. I'll deal with that in a little bit. So the best advice I had found, and seems to work pretty well for me, Oh, the other thing is, and I will do this before I sew the gusset on, you do want to take this to your iron, and you do want to press. Let me show you. It really is going to be important for your final construction of your bag. Once everything's put together, you are going to want this seam pressed open. Okay, so you can see that I have this seam pressed open very nicely. So now what I'm going to do is pin my gussets onto my bag. So of course I want to make sure that the direction of the gusset is appropriate to the, and then you see I'm kind of lining up, or maybe you can't see that. Okay, so I'm making sure that the gusset is pinned and lined up appropriately, and the patterns are in the same direction, and I'm kind of fitting it in kind of where it was cut, where the pattern kind of matches and continues. It's not going to be perfect, but anyway, so I'm going to pin one gusset to this side of the bag. Of course, I'm going to line it up with the top. And again, it doesn't take a ton of pins. And you don't want to go all the way to the bottom with your pins. You want to stop short of that. So about there. And then the other gusset we're going to do on the opposite side. And supposedly it makes it a little bit easier to sew them on. I don't know about that, but you know, if somebody that knows more than me says it makes it easier, then I'm going to take their word for it. There is a trick to doing it that makes it a little bit easier, but I honestly don't know if I'm going to be able to capture that on camera adequately. I'm doing the best I can with the camera setup that I have, so I'm hoping that you guys will be able to see the technique well with the camera setup. Okay, so here we go. Again, this is going to be a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Back stitch. Apologize for that, but I'm trying to make sure that you guys will be able to see what happens here when we get to the bottom. Okay, we're going to stitch to 1/2 inch before we get to the bottom, and then we're going to do this little maneuver that's going to allow us to just kind of continue sewing. Did I say knitting? Anyway, we're gonna sew till 1/2 inch before we reach the bottom, and again we're gonna manipulate the fabric in such a way that we just basically keep sewing a straight line. Okay, we're almost there. Okay, and I got hung up, so alright, we're going to, with the needle in the fabric, I'm going to lift the presser foot, and we're going to pull this fabric and twist it around. Okay, I don't know what's going on here, but for some reason my feed dog is not wanting to pull once it reaches a certain point, it's not wanting to continue to feed the fabric, and I don't know exactly what's hanging it up, but I'm going to start it about 1 inch back or so and sew back up to that point, and then hopefully we'll be able to get this technique done for you. Okay, with the needle in the fabric, I'm going to lift the presser foot, and we're going to give this gusset piece a twist around, but you still want to be going in a straight line, and I hope you're seeing that. So you see, we're still in a straight line, but we have our gusset now going at a 90-degree angle to the left away from us. So drop your presser foot back, and hopefully my machine will feed. I don't know what its little malfunction is. But it is not wanting to feed. I'm kind of at a loss here. I'm thinking maybe if I turn it to where it's not in a sticky area, I'm going to use a pin to mark my, about give or take a 1/2 inch, so I'll know that's where I need to start sewing. Okay, that took care of that issue. Now we can keep going up the side. So you might want to take some time now to go ahead and give this a couple of pins. Okay, so this corner is going to be less than perfect because of the little issue I had with the interfacing wanting to stick to the presser foot and not feed the fabric through. So it's okay, you know, it's not perfect. We're beginners. But trust me, nobody is going to be inspecting your bag that closely. Okay, I know that looked like some crazy work, and that you just think that's going to look so horrible on the outside of the bag, but you can see when it's turned out, it really, you cannot tell that you had such difficulties, honestly. So if you run into problems, don't panic and don't think, oh gosh, my bag is ruined. You know, a lot of the ugly part is going to be on the inside anyway, and you'd be amazed at just how, you know, normal it looks, how good it looks from the outside. It's not a perfect corner, but it's not bad. So let's go ahead and do the second gusset, and hopefully we won't have that problem. I don't know why the adhesive from the interfacing seeped through to the outside to where we were working, and that's what was causing that presser foot to stick. So let's go ahead and do the second one, and hopefully we won't have the same problems with it we had with the first one. Okay, now we're going to sew to about a 1/2 inch before we reach the bottom. That looks like a good spot with your needle and your fabric. You're going to take just this side portion, just the gusset. Oh, I should have turned this bag back out. Okay. Okay. And you're just going to put your presser foot back down and just keep sewing straight. And again, you're going to stop when you get to about a 1/2 inch before the end. And I might actually give it just a little bit more than a 1/2 inch, maybe 5/8 of an inch. Again, lift your presser foot. It's not wanting to twist too good for me. I might need to go just a little bit further. This and the handles, turning the handles out, are honestly two of the hardest parts of making this bag. If you can master these two parts, the rest of the bag is so simple by comparison. Okay, and again, you know, stuff happens. You have to roll with it and just keep going. As Dory would say, just keep swimming. Okay, and just because I didn't get a chance to lock the stitches down across that bottom part, I want to go ahead and do that now. I'm not sure how this is going to be easiest to do. I mean, it's the bottom of the bag and it's where so much of the weight's going to be, so I just want to make sure that it is good and secure. Okay. All right, now we've got the outside body of the bag built. In our next lesson, what we're going to do is come back and we're going to put the lining together, put the pieces of the lining together, and then we're going to put the bag together. Isn't that exciting? So thank you so much for tuning in for the second part in this series of constructing this bag. I know it's been fraught with complications, but I promise you, you're going to be so surprised at the overall finished bag and how you're not even going to see the complications that I experienced. So I encourage you, if you have complications while you're sewing a project, don't just trash the project or feel like you have to rip everything out and start over. Sometimes you can work around what's going on and the finished products still look really good. I mean, you could see when we turned the bag out, you couldn't tell that there was any issues at those corners. They looked just fine. So anyway, I'll see you guys next week, and you have a very blessed day. Bye now.